What's up guys, and do we have a special video for y'all today? This will be my first ever Camaro versus Mustang comparison video. We've got this 2019 Chevy Camaro SS1LE, which I've reviewed on the channel before, but today we'll be comparing it against the 2021 Ford Mustang Mach 1. Both cars, as spec'd, cost in the high $50,000 range. Both come with big, naturally aspirated V8 engines, 6-speed manual transmissions, front engine, rear drive, limited slip diff, and set up for track work. Both cars also weigh around 3,800 pounds, with the Camaro being maybe about 100 pounds lighter than the Mustang. And this is about as apples to apples as you can get. Both cars currently on Michelin 4S tires, MagneRide suspension. This is going to be very interesting. So a few specs about this SS1LE, 6.2 liter LT1 engine pushing out 455 horsepower and 455 pound-feet of torque. And this thing is full of adjustable driving modes, but today we will be setting it to the standard track mode. Now, first impressions in the car, the visibility out of this thing is just as bad as the first time I drove it. You really feel like you're cocooned inside this car, and this shroud over the gauge cluster really impedes a good amount of my forward visibility because I like to sit nice and low. The seating position actually is perfect, and I happen to love the seats as well. But yeah, seeing out of this thing, especially out the back, is not easy. There's that V8 torque. This engine is so flexible at all RPMs. You really don't have to rev it out if you don't want to. So much torque at low RPM, it's insane. This steering rack really feels excellent. For a car this heavy, it's got good weight, good feedback through the wheel. It's not too quick or too slow. Really no complaints at all with this steering rack. This front end, so much grip. This car is currently on a staggered tire setup, so slightly narrower at the front for a little bit of safety understeer. But out here in the canyons, you cannot get this thing to understeer. What I like about the SS1LE over the ZL1 1LE with the supercharger, this has a manageable amount of power. It's just right. It doesn't feel like it's too much for the street. It's still plenty of power, don't get me wrong, but it's not overwhelming. Look at that traction out of the corner. And that is so impressive, the way this thing is so composed at high speed and low speed corners. Woo! Shifter feel is excellent. It's so substantial but very positive engagement. There's no question what gear you're shifting into. Throttle response is excellent, as you'd expect from a naturally aspirated 6.2 liter. Oh, I can feel that traction control system holding me back a little bit in these hairpins. But overall, the car just feels so neutral and so balanced out here. It's incredible what Chevy's able to do with a 3,800 pound car. Now, we've got a sign for rough road, but this car doesn't give a damn. These MagneRide dampers will soak up any kind of bump you can throw at it. It's so much more compliant than the DSSV suspension found in the ZL1 1LE. This is a much more street-friendly car, while at the same time, in my opinion, being a lot more fun to drive. Listen to those pops and bangs from this exhaust. It's gnarly in track mode. There's really no reason to be in second, but why not? The shifter is so enjoyable to use that I'm downshifting just for the hell of it. Deep into the brakes, no fade whatsoever, firm pedal. I absolutely love this suspension. This is the best stock suspension I've felt in a very long time. It's just the right balance of compliance and daily drivability combined with its excellent body control. There's very little body roll in this car. Even mid-corner, when you're going over bumps, the car never feels unsettled. I absolutely love the suspension. To me, it almost feels like a well-tuned set of Öhlins coilovers. Let's see what this exhaust sounds like in tour mode. I'm curious if it loses some of that fizz. The exhaust might get a little quieter from outside, but from inside the car, that intake noise is still intoxicating. Now with that said, how will the Mustang Mach 1 compare? I think when the Mach 1 came out and Car and Driver got their hands on it at a racetrack, they were able to clock a time that was quite a bit faster than even a Shelby GT350R. But how does that track performance translate into canyon road driving dynamics? That's what we're about to find out. All right, the 2021 Mustang Mach 1. First impressions when I was driving up this hill, this is a very serene, comfortable, quiet car when you have all the settings backed off. With the exhaust in quiet mode, suspension in soft mode, steering in comfort mode, this thing is super livable. The visibility is far better than the Camaros. I can see out the front and the sides so much better. Rear visibility is a bit limited, especially with that wing out back, but it's a much easier car to drive around town, that's for sure. I feel like there's actually less road noise and tire noise in this car, even though it has the same Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. But anyways, that's not what we're here to find out. We're gonna see how this Mustang Mach 1 compares on a canyon road. So a few specs about the car. It's over 3,800 pounds. It has the familiar 5-liter Coyote V8 naturally aspirated, same engine found in the standard Mustang GT, but it's been uprated in this car to produce 480 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. So compared to that SS1LE, it's got 25 more horsepower. It revs out about an extra 1,000 RPM, but it makes 35 foot-pounds less torque. So in terms of settings, we're gonna set the exhaust mode to normal. One of the other things I noticed when I jumped from the Camaro into this Mach 1, this steering rack is so much lighter. Even in sport mode, which is the heaviest mode, it's very light to the touch. It has a little bit more of a vagueness on center, if I'm being honest. Now, Leonard, the owner of this Mach 1, mentioned that with Cup 2 tires, the steering feel greatly improves. But with these 4Ss, for some reason, it's definitely a little bit light and numb. Wow, this engine, so much top end power, revs out to 7,400 RPMs. Makes a fantastic sound up top. A more exciting sound at high RPM than the Camaro. Listen to that. Love this digital gauge cluster and track mode with this linear tachometer. It's really cool and easy to read. Yeah, steering feel is lacking in this car. With these Pilot Sport 4S tires, can't really tell what the front end is doing. The Camaro steering is a lot more direct. What an engine! I've never driven the 5.2 liter Shelby GT350, and I'm sure that's on a whole other level, but from where I'm sitting, this engine is amazing. Also, the gearing's nice and short. Second gear tops out at around 67, 68 miles an hour. Definitely feels like shorter gearing compared to that Camaro. And the advantage of this is that it really lets you play with this amazing gearbox, and you can keep the engine in its power band, which is around 5,000 to redline. Brake feel is decent, but not as good as that Camaro's. It has a little bit of a squish to the first half of the pedal travel. That said, this car is on stock brake pads, whereas Nate's Camaro is on Hawk HP Plus, which is a more track-focused pad. So that could be the difference. Listen to the way that engine just stays in its power band during that 1 to 2 shift. So easy to heel toe downshift. I honestly can't decide which shifter I prefer. Both of these cars have amazing 6-speed manuals. Wow, this is such a good car. Both of these cars are so good. Look how far American muscle cars have come in the last few years. These cars feel more like dedicated sports cars than muscle cars of old. Compared to Mustangs and Camaros from 20 years ago, these are in a completely different league in terms of not only outright performance, but the way they make you feel when you push them. So connected, so well sorted. The engineers over at Ford and Chevy have done an incredible job with both of these cars. But back to the comparison, this Mustang definitely feels like it's more up on its tippy toes. Even though this Mustang also has Magna-Ride suspension, it doesn't feel as hunkered down or planted as that Camaro's Magna-Ride setup. While it still has excellent damping and you can go over bumps with plenty of poise, the car moves around a little bit more. I get the impression that there's a little bit more weight transfer happening whenever I brake, accelerate, or corner. And that makes this car more lively to drive. But it has to be said, it doesn't feel quite as composed as that SS1LE. So in short, the Camaro SS1LE as well as the Mustang Mach 1 are incredible driver's muscle cars. They're both tuned to do lap after lap at your local racetrack, and even on a canyon road, they're so much fun to drive. Now before I get into which one I prefer, let's throw the exhaust mode back into normal and see how this thing sounds flat out one last time. So good. It sounds so good. All right, back to the question of which car I would prefer. I think it really is splitting hairs here. These cars are very different in a lot of ways, more different than you would think based on their specs. And I appreciate both of them for their differences, but let me try to explain it this way. If this car was to be my dedicated track car, or even going to see 70% of its time or more on the track, I'd go with an SS1LE. It feels more hunkered down, and because it has less visibility and a little bit less ride comfort, I think that car is a little better suited to track work, regardless of lap times. Whereas this Mach 1, it's more suited to daily driving. It's a little bit quieter, it has a little bit less road noise, but at the end of the day, it's also an insane performer. I prefer this engine to the one in the Camaro, and I love the short gears. It really makes this thing a ton of fun to drive, even on a canyon road or on a daily basis. Let me know what you guys think of the SS1LE versus the Mach 1, and let me know which one you think is better for the money. For right around 50 to 60 grand used, these cars are absolutely awesome, and you really can't go wrong with either of them. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.